Welcome to Demystify and Make Money with Rent to Own. How agents and lenders can increase sales and help unqualified buyers. So I'm your instructor, James Brown. I'm team leader with the Magnus Team at eXp Realty. Also the owner of Real Home Solutions. We're a rent to own company, and I'll talk about our company and other ones in this presentation. I'm also the co-host of the Mr. Rent to Own Homes show. So we go over kind of all the ins and outs of rent to own. And this presentation should really give you a good high level view, but that show is also valuable because we really dig in deep on multiple different topics. I'm also the author of Hybrid Real Estate Investing, which is basically the investing side of rent to own. So there's kind of two sides of it that makes this all work. And I'm also a DORA certified continuing education instructor. So this presentation is basically the class that I teach for agents and lenders. I like to have lenders on that here in Colorado where I'm licensed. So let's just talk about the benefits for buyers. First of all, they get to pick out a home. There's different ways rent-to-own businesses work, but typically, if we have a buyer that fits a rent-to-own program, they can pick out a home that's on the market. They get to move in right away. They don't have to move multiple times, which can be a nightmare, especially if you've got multiple kids and pets. I've got stories about all that. They can make updates to the home and, just make it theirs and not have to, feel like a renter, like they're on the path to becoming the end buyer, the homeowner. So, and then they lock in their price now, not chasing the market up. During COVID, the market was going sky high, but they actually lock in their price now. So if the market goes crazy, they're not having to overpay. The market can go down, and we'll talk about that too. But if the market goes up, they can gain equity. And then they have an option to buy. It's a lease with an option to buy. So if there's a major crash, it's up to them. They can walk away. So we'll dive into all of that stuff. So objectives for this class, this master class, is for you guys as agents to learn how you can help buyer clients that currently can't get a mortgage, learn who can qualify and what properties are the best fit for rent to own, and then most importantly for you guys, how you can earn commissions. And then I'm also going to talk about how lenders can close more loans. So when lenders understand how they can work together with us, they love us for two reasons. So what do you normally do with turn down clients that can't get a mortgage? Well, we put them on a follow-up campaign, right? Might refer them to credit repair if credit is an issue. Hold them back from getting a loan. And then we might set a follow-up call and hope they come back, right? Like a lot can happen. If we're not staying in touch with them, who knows? They might go with somebody else. And then we find out later, oh shoot, they bought a house without us. So if we can get them into a home now, great. We get paid and they're super happy. We become a hero because, the banks were telling them no and we're telling them yes and getting them into a house. So they absolutely love us. I mean, have people in tears, so happy that we helped them. So, and then we're giving those clients time to fix any problems that they need to straighten out to get a loan later. And of course, again, you get paid now. So one of the main reasons I put this course together was there's bad juju around rent to own. So we've heard that clients have gotten scammed, like intentionally. The clients don't end up buying the home, and they might lose their money. And those are legit things. So I'm going to talk a lot about it in this masterclass about why that happens and what we can do to protect our clients and ourselves. So just kind of high level what the process is. If you got a client that you think might not be able to qualify for a loan, or they've already talked to a lender, introduce them to a rent-to-own company. Like I said, we've got a company and there's others out there, and have them fill out the application form, or you can fill out the form for them. And then what we want to do is, I call it pre-qualification. If we want to find out from, we layer on our kind of criteria, but we also want to find out from a lender, and that could be your lender, your partner lender, your favorite lender, to find out why they can't qualify and what they need to do. So I call that pre-qualification. So if they can't get a mortgage from the lender, but they fit the rent-to-own model, then they can go pick out an example home. I don't want to waste your time or theirs going and looking at homes prematurely. So what we like to do is just pick out an example home. Just have them go look on Zillow or your website, your search site, and just kind of get things narrowed down so we know their price range, how many beds and baths and location. And then we agree to terms based on that home, because we run the numbers and see what those numbers might look like. And then once we've got that dialed, then you can go take them to actually see homes. And then once they pick a home and want to make an offer, we actually step in as a rent-own company and make an offer basically on behalf of those buyers. We're actually buying it temporarily until they can get a loan. So we're actually making that offer. So you can step back, and we'll keep you involved in all of this, you and your clients. So don't worry about it. Just like being out of your hands. Like we stay with you every step of the way, communicating how things are going. So once we make that offer, then we get the agreement signed between your client and us or any other rent-to-own company. They're going to pay a fee up front. They need some skin in the game, and we'll touch on that later in the master class. So we're giving them time and the resources to qualify for a bank loan while they live in the home, like I said. And then once they get the ability to get a loan, they exercise their option and, when they're ready, and actually own the home. Deed transfers to them. So ideal clients, they've got steady income. They've got money to pay upfront for the upfront fee and some savings cushion. Also fixable issues. So, life happens. Things trip people up, divorce, illness, layoffs, any number of things. But as long as we see that they're fixable, and that the clients are motivated to fix them, if we get them in a house, they're going to be. So, and then if the lender says, hey, yeah, we can put a plan together, as long as they stick with it, and they give us a thumbs up, then that's an ideal client. And kind of to go back to the steady income, if they're W-2 or they're 1099, self-employed, whatever the case may be, mostly we're helping self-employed people, because banks don't like self-employed people, and us as agents, we're self-employed. So we're in the same boat, so we can help help people in the same boat. So clients that may not be qualified, if they don't have any money up front, and I'm going to get into those amounts and how those are applied. If they don't have any money, they're not going to fit rent to own. They've got to have some kind of skin in the game. Same as, a regular buyer. They've got to have a down payment, or a bank's not going to loan them money on a entire house. So that's kind of the number one thing. I like to have them have savings cushion. I don't want them paying all of their money and kind of be on the edge. We want them to have some backup in case they have a job change or something like that. If they have a spotty job history or don't have a current job, that's risky. We're looking at this very much like a lender, and we're looking at it along with a lender too, but we're taking it that next step where a lender says, no, we can't get them into any program. So we're looking at the same things. So they need to have some consistent income and be able to pay their rent. If their DTI, their debt to income ratio, is too high, that's not good. If they've got habitual credit problems, that's another thing. We look at credit reports, and if I've seen 4 pages long of credit issues, and oftentimes that's just habitual, like they're not paying their debts when maybe they could. But when we dig into it, we usually have a pretty good idea of what's going on there. And then again, if the lenders looked at them and they're like, I wouldn't touch this, we're going to take their opinion into consideration for sure. Okay, so ideal properties, anything that's available on the MLS. So that's the first thing. Single family homes is the ideal. We can do townhomes if they're fee simple and warrantable. They've got to be able to get a loan for it in the future. So we're always looking at that next step. But ideally single family. One of the reasons is if we get the house back, which we set this up so we don't get the house back, they're easier to sell than a townhome or a condo or mobile homes, for instance. Also, metro areas near good schools. We kind of stay away from rural. The next slide, we'll talk about what is not ideal, but 3-bedroom, 2-bath or more, median price range, under that conformity limit. And then, again, eligible for a mortgage in the future. So if it's, like I said, a condo as an example, a lot of them aren't warrantable. You might have to get somebody into a conventional loan, not an FHA, or they might have to pay cash. There's stuff gets sticky there. So we just want to look into the future and make sure that they can get a loan. So yeah, unqualified properties. If they're jumbo loans, that makes it harder to make that all work. Condos, manufactured mobile homes, rural areas, or if it's not habitable, we're flexible on that. We've done different options there, but they're not the ideal ones. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, there's a lot of confusion over like equity in the home and rent credits. So I'll try to keep this as simple as possible, and feel free to reach out if you've got questions about it. But so like with our program as an example, ideally they've got around 10% of the purchase price to pay up front. And that amount it's a non-refundable. option consideration. That's the term. So they're paying that up front for the option to buy it in the future. The way we do it is we give them full credit when they go get their loan. So they can use that for their down payment, closing costs, equity in the house, like it comes off the purchase price. So, and I bring this up and I put it in parentheses there, not all programs give credit for that. So you gotta be aware of that. We do give them full credit for it. And back to that 10%, sure, that sounds high, but these buyers are not, they're not FHA buyers. They don't have that option, so they're more risky. So because it's non-refundable, we like to have a little bit more. But we're also setting them up for success, the buyers, because they're going to need a down payment, and they may not be able to get an FHA loan, or their credit might still be low, and so they may need to put more down. So, they might end up with a conventional loan that's 5%. It might be higher, or they might be ITIN buyers. They're from a foreign country. They don't have a social security number, and those programs are usually 10%, 15, 20% down. So at least we've got 10% sitting there waiting for them to use. And then, we've got to make sure they've got money for the closing costs. So they're prepaying that, and all they really have to do is either they need time as a self-employed person, maybe need to report on their taxes or fix credit, any of those kinds of things that are holding them back from getting a mortgage. So that's how we operate. Similar to some other companies, there's varieties of amounts down. There's hidden fees in some of these other programs, and like I said, not all programs give credit, so they may pay some fees that aren't being given to them as credit. So again, if you got questions about this, our program or other ones, I can kind of walk you through the differences and help you and your clients make the best decision. So the next thing is rent credits. So some companies may ask for less upfront, might be 1 or 2%. In that case, they need to save up money so they've got that down payment and closing costs when they go get their loan in 1, 2, 3 years. Like we do up to 10-year options. But either way, they've got to save that up. So rent credits are a way to build up that savings over time. And so as an example, say market rent is $3,000. Well, that extra $200 that you see in the slide there, that is being set aside to build up that amount for the down payment and their closing costs. So their total rent would be, say, $3,200. This is just numbers I just came up with out of the blue. But you can see how it breaks down, so that extra $200 is a credit to them. So it's a forced savings plan, which is actually helping protect them. And that, sometimes you hear people say, oh, that's rent to own is really expensive per month. This is probably why. They're probably forcing that savings plan, which is actually helping protect that client. And of course, they've got to have good jobs and be able to afford it. And ideally, when they go get their mortgage, and we always look at this, we run our numbers at what their rent is now and what their mortgage payments is going to be in the future, because we don't want that to jump up and be a big shock and maybe they can't afford it. So we want it to be something where it stays the same or maybe even goes down. All right. What ifs? So I always get questions on this. What if the market goes down or the client can't get their financing in time? So there's multiple things we can do. first thing is just extend the lease and the option period. So we can do that for free or maybe build in a fee. We've done both. Not every company may extend. There's a lot of factors in here, but that's kind of the easy one. Just keep it going. As long as they're paying their rent, why not? Just let them keep renting until they can buy the house. The difference between the money that they pay up front and the loan amount may cover that spread. So if they're paying 10%, we've had people in riskier situations pay up 15, 20% up front. And so if there's an appraisal gap because that house went up in value, they've got that money and they can make that decision whether they want to use that money towards that appraisal gap. Maybe they've got some extra money. They can pay that appraisal gap out of pocket. And again, this is an option to buy, a lease with an option to buy. So they're not obligated to buy. They can walk away if they want. That money that they paid up front is non-refundable. So it's a decision they can make. It's kind of, decisions in their hands. And then could renegotiate the terms. That's kind of up to whoever bought it and buyer. So, and then they possibly could assign the contract to another buyer. We don't do that. Some companies may allow that or may reconsider. So that's why I put maybe on both of those. But those are kind of some of the options if they can't buy in time or the market goes up. But for us, our goal is to help that client, not hurt them. So do no harm, right? So that's our goal. Okay, best practices. So work with a competent, willing company and a lender to get the information, really dig into why this person can't get a loan and get them pre-qualified. That's number one, best practice. Come up with that plan so everyone's involved, so we all know what they need to do to get their loan in the future. We want to be super clear on that. And then again, I like them to have extra money in savings for cushion. Don't want to have them just on fumes. And then if they need help with credit repair, I can refer them, or if you've got a credit repair specialist, great. Oftentimes our lenders can give them the basic guidance to do that without actually paying for credit repair. But if they're in a real sticky situation, they might need some extra help. So we'll figure that out up front, right? And then it's good to have the contracts reviewed by a professional. We have a place for the agent, you guys representing the client, and on our side too, because I'm at least in Colorado, I'm representing our investor that we work with, or ourselves if we're the investor. If it's outside Colorado where I am, then we're going to work with a team or maybe you directly. We're getting in the weeds a little here, but anyway, just to say, it's good to have somebody in both corners reviewing these contracts so everybody understands the verbiage. And our contracts are just a handful of pages as an example, but one company that I'm aware of they're getting out of the business, but they had like a 79-page contract. And let me tell you, I was full of CYAs for them, not necessarily for the clients. So that's why I bring this up. You want to take a look at those agreements so you and your client understand what they're getting into. I don't want to scare you off from rent to own. I just want to make you aware that these are best practices, and everybody should go into this with a clear understanding of what this is. And then final best practice, follow up with the buyer, lender, and if there's a credit specialist involved. So we do that as a company, but say you're working with somebody else, or you might be the investor. If you're doing that, setting this up yourself or working with us as an investor, as an example, following up with them periodically is a good idea. Just make sure they're on track so they don't get to the end of their option period and can't buy because they weren't staying on top of what they needed to do. So here's some case studies. So Aaron was a brand new real estate agent. Like I mentioned, self-employed. He didn't have a full 2 years income. He was a newer agent. He actually picked out a duplex, and this was in Minnesota, working with a partner of ours there. And within 2 years, the market went up. So this example, this was during COVID when, the market was going way up. Worked out great for him. He got a bunch of equity. And kind of at the same time when he was able to exercise his option, he was able to buy a single family home also with his wife and turn that duplex into a rental. So within a year and a half, he was able to become a homeowner and become an investor with 2 units. And because he'd gone through this process, he became one of our buyer specialists. So he could walk other buyers through the process, and because he'd been through it as a buyer. So Kent and Trina, they had some debts accumulate during COVID, some spotty job stuff going on there. But in their case, they actually had a home. This was in Aurora, Colorado. They wanted to move down to a rural town in Colorado and be near her parents. They were able to buy within 3 years. This was one of those kind of out of the box ones because it was a rural home. We had to deal with septic inspection, water well inspection. It had 2 separate pieces of land that hadn't been merged. There was a lot that we had to deal with, but we figured it out, and they were super happy that they were able to move down there. It's kind of back to having that current home here in the basically Denver area. They were able to sell that. I helped them sell it, and that gave them the money so that they could pay their option fee and have a runway, because they didn't have jobs when they moved down there. That's another thing. Like usually the best fit is somebody, same job in the same city, same industry. In this case, they had to move down there, but they paid 15% upfront. So that was a little extra security, and also their purchase price in the future was, the equity they'd paid up front was keeping their mortgage down when they actually got their loan. And they had that money so they could go down and get jobs. And he was a contractor, so he had some transferable skills. Part of her job she could do remote, so we felt safe. So those are the kinds of things we think about when we're looking at somebody and trying to put one of these situations together. So Jose and Maria, this another example where that 10%, they were ITIN buyers. They didn't have a social security number. They had a tax ID number because they were from outside the country, and they had a good job. This is actually a home in Florida. And so when they go to get their loan, they're going to need 10% or more, depending on the lender. So that they paid the 10% up front. And so they were able to purchase within a couple years. So just real simple, how we're looking at this, the numbers is how much money do they have up front? How much are they going to pay per month for their lease? Excuse me. And the future purchase price, because we're buying it at today's price, and then we build in some appreciation based on the standard market appreciation. So we're not raising the price a huge amount. Like, we're looking at what that actual market is, because it's going to have to appraise, so we want it to be totally fair for them. So that's how we look at it. But it's those three numbers. We're trying to find a balance between all three of those for both the buyer client and on our side as the investor. And each client, each market, each investor is different, so there's no formula for this. We're just trying to find a balance and something that works for everybody. So here's an example, like Denver market. This is about median price range, depending, $550,000. If they're paying 10%, that'd be $55,000. And again, that's a full credit with our program to them when they buy. And then monthly rent might be $4,700 in year one, and we'll increase the rent, $100 a year, just so it's kind of keeping up with the market. And then their future purchase price, this is based on 6% appreciation. You can see it changing every year. And so they're incentivized to buy as soon as they can. And again, these are just hypothetical numbers. They're all negotiable. And so we just find a good balance. And there's different ways of doing this. We can have the rent stay the same instead of going up, but it might start out more kind of in that middle range or something. Or future purchase price, we've done it where we've even done a 10-year option where it's just one price. So they can buy at any time after 1 year. Usually these are 1 year or more. Like most people that do rent to own, they're going to need that time. But I say that they can buy after 1 year because we get hit with short-term capital gains, which is painful. Like fix and flippers get hit with if we sell within a year. But like I said, most buyers need that year or more, and most, like this example, are 1 to 3 years. Most people can get their credit straightened out or file their taxes and get on track in that amount of time. But again, we can do up to 10 years. And different states are different. Texas, for instance, 3 years is the max. Most of the ones that I know that are put together down there are shorter. But we can, if you have questions about that, give me a shout. So strategic partners. Now that you guys kind of know about how all this works, go out to your lenders, tell them about this. They can come back and watch this. They're a good partner for you because they're doing loan apps all day long, hopefully. And they're running across people that they can't qualify. So if you guys can work together and get them into a rent-to-own program, not just say, no, sorry, and put them on a drip, it's good to loop in your lenders. And then fellow agents, if you've got a team, brokerage, whatever, let your other fellow agents know about this. Credit repair companies, they're running across people that can't get qualified for a loan because of credit. So talk to them about this. New construction, those builders, I get calls once in a while from people saying, hey, we picked out all the finishes for this house and we can't qualify for the loan. It could be because that client did something stupid, like went and bought a car. If you've been in the business, that stuff happens. The lender might not have caught something up front. And this could be the builder's lender or your lender. Anyways, sometimes things get off the rails. And so let people know, talk to those builders and let them know that you might be able to help them get those buyers into that house that they bought or got under contract. So, and then financial planners, they're in people's finances and run across people, bankruptcy and divorce attorneys, insurance agents, CPAs, all people that are kind of in the business where money and real estate cross paths. Just talk to all those people and tell them what you can do. So this is just a tool in the belt. So let people know that you've got the tool. Okay, so how do you get paid? So you guys as agents get paid when we buy that property. Again, as we're all aware, with the NAR settlement, that commission, the buy-side commission, is part of that contract and that negotiation. So as long as we put that in there and have a good contract where there's money, then we split that with you guys. Lenders love us because they can get paid now because they can close the loan for us up front, because we're not buying these in cash and holding them in cash. There's going to be a loan available for that lender, and then they can also get paid later. We're getting them into a house, those buyers into a house. They need a loan. It's not just like, oh, we'd like to buy in the next 6 months or a couple years, and they're on a drip. We got them in a house. They need a loan so they can exercise their option. So that's a good, solid loan for that lender later, as long as we set this up and get them on the path. So lenders love us. They can get both sides of that. It could be the same lender, or sometimes it's two different lenders, but either way, two lenders are getting paid at least. So action steps. This is where the rubber meets the road. So go back to your database, look for those leads that may be a good fit for rent to own, that you had to turn down, that are on your drip, or that you've got notifications to follow up with. Like, go back in there. You might be surprised how many people may be a fit. We've done that with lenders, and they've we got 10 people that might fit right now. And so you can work with that lender. If you've got agents in your office, some have left the business and still may have a database of people that could be good leads. So reach out to those agents that left the business, or maybe just agents in your office that are busy. They've got plenty of business. They don't have the time or want to go look through and call these leads that could be a fit. If you're willing to do that, go do that. So now that you've kind of gone through this class, you can be the go-to rent-to-own agent and answer questions. We can partner up, and I can teach you even more, go more into depth, and make you that go-to agent. I'm actually starting a coaching program. So if you're in a market outside Colorado, we can talk about that. Post to your social media. I actually have some graphics, just unbranded graphics that you could send out, or I could help you come up with something on your own, and get that out there. You'll get a lot of hits. You might have to go through quite a few leads that don't qualify, but that's just kind of the name of the game. You could add this if you're sending out a newsletter. Add something about rent to own in there. specifically self-employed people like that. People that are self-employed are are a good fit for this. So you might word it that way, right? Can tell your lenders about this, have them come rewatch this, or call me. I can kind of walk them through how they can work together with us, and ask your lenders if you could work their turn down leads. They may have some, may be able to filter and just send them to you, and you can call them if they're busy, or you could just have them message those turn down leads, and send them some information about how we can help with rent to own. Again, share these programs with your database, your EXP team, lenders. You can market to find these buyers. Actually run ads, Facebook ads as an example, and make it your niche. You could do a video. We could talk about that. I could help you come up with a script and do a little talking head video and put that out to your social media, or even turn that into an ad. Let's see. That's kind of a repeat, telling your broker and fellow agents about it. So I say that this is actually a CE class here in Colorado, but you can send them this recording too. They just wouldn't get the CE credit that I can give here in Colorado. So if you've watched this, I consider you as an agent, I consider you certified. Some companies will have a certification program where you go through and watch some videos just so you can understand the subtleties about those companies. The two big companies that I'm thinking about are getting out of the business, but they had programs where you could go through and get certified. But you want to know what those programs are all about. So, and again, for like our company, Real Home Solutions, just go to realhomesolutions.org /power partners, power-partners. I've got a video on there, kind of a short version of this on there. And then if you have clients that you want to see if they fit rent to own, just on the homepage, you could fill out a form, and there's a field in there for your name as the agent, so I know who they're working with. So let's see. Pro tips. We're almost done here, guys. If you have a listing that matches, that ideal rent-to-own home, single family, metro area, near good schools, median price range, that kind of cookie cutter homes, that's a good lead source for you. So in your listing terms, this is Colorado's listing terms. You can check lease purchase, owner will carry, private financing available. They're all kind of related seller financing options. You can check those, and people actually are searching for those that maybe can't get a loan. And you'll have investors reach out to you, looking for deals where they don't have to go get financing. But that could also be an opportunity for you to create a relationship with an investor and get into that side of the business. And then tell your seller that is what you're doing, because it could attract more potential buyers than just the fully qualified ones. And then we can step in and buy that listing from your client. And we're putting down a minimum 20%. So it's a good, strong offer for your clients that you're listing for. So all that said, that's a way to get your own rent-own buyer leads out of it, and potentially a strong buyer for your listing. And let's get creative. Like if you've got listings that aren't selling, I know a lot of creative financing options, and fix and flippers. So if you got issues, reach out to me. We can put our heads together and try to find a solution. So examples of that. You might have a seller that doesn't have any equity to even pay your commission. Well, that's a problem, right? You're not going to get paid, but there's ways of getting paid if we get creative. If the house needs too much work to sell on the market, we've got some other options. I've got like tons of cash buyers and flippers, at least in this market, and I've got a big network around the country. So reach out, we can figure something out. And then this is kind of a unique thing. So if you've got clients, they want to get access to their equity, but they don't qualify. Like maybe they bought the house, but now their credit score dropped and they're trying to do a refi, cash out refi, or get a HELOC, and they need that money, but they can't get to it. We've got an option for them related to rent to own. So keep that in the back of your mind. And if you have investor clients looking, for different options, this is a great way to invest. Feel free to introduce us, or if you want to be an investor yourself as an agent, we've worked with other investor agents. In fact, that rural property I used as that case study, the investor was actually an agent and a flipper, very, very creative. And they love doing this because they're actually helping somebody, legitimately helping somebody become a homeowner. So they love that fact. So if you have questions, hit me up on EXP's workplace chat. Text or call that number there, or send me an email. All right, thanks.